I call to order the regular city council meeting for Monday, March 4th, 2024, at 5:30 PM. I would like to ask you to silence your cell phones or put them on vibrate to limit interruptions, please, and thank you. Moving on to item number 1 on the agenda, that's the roll call.
Here.
Evans. Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner. Fajagula.
Here.
Ross.
Here. Item number 2, joining us today is a representative from Girl Scout Troop 10319. Katie is going to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Katie. And for your efforts, I will be buying some Girl Scout cookies from you, just a little FYI. Moving on to item number 3 on the mayor's report. I have a few meetings and events I attended. The Alcohol Review Committee had the last 2 Fridays. I spent the mornings up at the Minot Air Force Base with senior enlisted, having coffee with them and the airmen, and got some really good feedback from both groups, so that's always enjoyable. We, a group from the city, attended a state fair planning meeting, had a meeting with staff from Visit Minot. Over the weekend, attended the NCAA Division II Super Regional. Also attended the Dakota Rattlers Wrestling, the Home and Garden Show, the flea market. Had a stop by a team meal for the South Prairie Royals girls basketball team, and congratulations to them. And also stopped in at the state tournament. So it was a busy weekend in Minot, and want to thank all the organizers and volunteers who helped pull those off. So a chamber meeting, suicide symposium planning meeting. Had spent some time recording a podcast over the weekend, chamber business after hours, and we also had meetings with Representative Kelly Armstrong and Senator John Hoeven since the last city council meeting. So if there are no questions, then I will move on to item number 4 on the agenda, and that's the city manager's report. Harold.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, before I open up for any questions with regards to the city manager's report, I just wanted to extend a public thank you to Justin Anderson, who's been stepping down as the Minot Area Council of the Arts Director. Has a new opportunity at Minot State, so he'll still be in the community and be involved, but definitely appreciate his efforts over the years with regards to bringing arts and culture to our community, and he's done a fabulous job, and he's leaving some big shoes to fill for whoever's next after him. So I just want to give a public statement of appreciation for his work and efforts there. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have with regards to the staff memo that's part of the council packet.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 5 on the agenda. That's the city attorney's report. Staff.
Mayor, members of the council, I submitted a written report, and I'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 6 on the agenda. That is consent, our consent agenda. There are currently 20 items on the consent agenda. I've been asked to pull item 6.3 and 6.15. 6.3 and 6.15. Are there any others on the consent agenda to be pulled? Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Move approval on remaining items.
We have a motion by Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Pittner.
Yes.
Fajagula.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Evans. Yes. Janser.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Moving on then to item 6.3, administrative approvals. This was asked to be pulled by Councilman Burlingame, and I guess I'll turn it over to you, Scott.
I just wanted this pulled to abstain as I have, my employer is up for approval for a raffle permit.
Okay, what are the wishes of the council?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Pittner.
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Evans. Yes. Janser.
Yes.
Olson. Yes.
Moving on, the consent, we move to item 6.15, the CPKC Rail Quiet Zone Engineering Agreements. I was asked to pull that by Councilman Padragula. So Steve.
move that.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion, Steve?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Lance, our city engineer, to come forward and verify my understanding of the timing of this project. Lance, am I correct in my understanding that this is to allow for the engineering studies to get started and they would be completed this year? You would actually doing the construction next year in 2025?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Padragula, the way that this would work is it's kind of a two-part project. So the city has improvements that would take place within the city's public right-of-way. So we would construct concrete medians and sidewalks and curbs and such in the street. And the CP Rail would construct signal improvements, so crossing arms and such on their tracks. And that would occur in 2025. So much like our traffic signals, they have to order this equipment, and it takes about a year for them to procure it. So they would construct that equipment in 2025. So as soon as we sign these contracts, they would start their engineering, which takes only a few weeks, and they would order that equipment, and it would show up probably in the spring of '25, and then their forces would install it. And so we're anticipating that work to occur sometime about this time to later spring of 2025.
So by the end of the construction season in 2025, we should have quiet zones all through downtown?
I would say
In town.
it's probably early summer. That's
Summer
what
even.
we're anticipating.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think a lot of people are looking forward to that.
Yes, so are we.
Anything else for Lance? Scott?
Lance, can you just clarify, what is the sections of town that'll be covered by this quiet zone? Is it only downtown? Is it beyond downtown? What's the kind of, how big is this going to be?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Burlingame, this would cover the entire city of Minot on CP Casey's trackage. So right now, they do not have any at-grade crossings until you get to Maple Street. And we would take out the crossing at Maple Street with the improvements. And then we have a great crossing at 6th Street. And then we would not have any horns at Main Street, 1st Street, and then we would have improvements at Central Avenue and 3rd Street. And then Amtrak Depot would have improvements. And then there'd be nothing at 9th Street and 8th Avenue. And because we're putting in improvements at the Amtrak Depot, Central, and 3rd Street, we score enough safety points where we don't have to treat any of the other crossings. And then that allows us to have a quiet zone through all of Minot on CP's tracks.
Thanks. That's what I really wanted clarification. It's, although obviously
Downtown.
everybody downtown appreciated it, it's really an entire
City.
swath of Minot.
That's correct.
Any other questions or comments for Lance? Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
Any other further discussion? We have a motion to approve. And seeing none, please call the roll.
Padragula.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Olson. Yes. Pittner.
Yes.
Moving on to item number 7 on the agenda, that's action items. 7.1, the ordinance requiring buildings and businesses receiving public funds to install an automatic door. At this time, Steph, do you have anything to present on before we?
Sure, I can briefly comment on the ordinance that's in front of you here today. So per Councilman Padragula's direction at the last meeting, I prepared this ordinance for the council's consideration. A lot of it is borrowed from the City of Mandan's ordinance. So I might be placing our public information officer on the spot, but I'm plugged into Dias 7 if you can display my laptop screen. So over on the right, you're going to see a draft of the ordinance that's attached to the council agenda. You'll see that I'm putting it as a separate article underneath Chapter 9. So where that's going to be cited, if you look over here on the left, I pulled up our Code of Ordinances. Chapter 9 concerns building and housing, and it has several articles that are underneath it, including the building code, codes on dangerous buildings, moving buildings, excavation, the housing code, housing financing program, and loan to lenders housing program. Given this is something that I think could have the potential to grow, I thought it would make the most sense to create a new article, Article 8, accessibility requirements for buildings receiving public funds. If there's any other accessibility requirements that could be required that, in addition to automatic doors, it could be cited underneath that particular article. So as you'll see under Section 9, the automatic door requirement, every building open to public use that's received the benefit of public funds from the city will be required to provide for the installation of an automatic door, meaning one, for at least one main entrance to the building. There's several definitions in here that are defined, including a definition of public funds, which is provided in Century Code. That's the exact same definition that's in the Mandan ordinance as well. There's several use groups that we have made this applicable to, and those are found in the Chapter 2.2 of the Minot Land Development Ordinance in the Table of Uses. So it's primarily for buildings or businesses that are established for public and private institutional uses and commercial uses. It's not for every building in Minot that should happen to receive public funds. There's a waiver opportunity for if the installation of an automatic door is technically infeasible, and that is as is defined in federal law, and that's stated there. There is a non-compliance paragraph as well, and an application paragraph that indicates that the article is only going to apply to building projects or renovations that have applied for and received public funds subsequent to March 18th, which that date would be subject to change if we want to have some more time to work on this particular ordinance. That's taking into consideration if it were to pass tonight on first reading, and then it would be approved on the 18th. So no rush to anyone here. I just have that in here as a placeholder, and we can change that if you want to think about the terms and the language in this ordinance as well. And then this requirement would not apply to grant or award of public funds to a recipient that's less than $5,000. That was a section that, again, was in Mandan's ordinance. I've pulled that up for you too. You can see it's very similar here as well. And there's the requirement not applying to the grant or award of public funds to a recipient that's less than $5,000. So with that, I'll stand for any questions. This is a first draft that's before you on first reading, so please feel free to make any recommendations that you see fit.
Are there any questions of Steph? I would, if there's any interest, I would, what?
Sorry.
Scott, go ahead.
I do.
I'm sorry.
Stephanie, what entities or what granting agencies right now would be covered by this as you're looking at it? Obviously, we'd look at, we talked about it before, like the facade improvement program. But what other, can you just kind of help me out with that? Like, who does this cover?
So this is going to cover anybody who's receiving funds from the city. So if you look in paragraph A, every building open to public use. So it has to be a building that's open to public use. It's not going to be somebody who has a private residence that perchance should be receiving public funds, like through our, like some of our flood programs, things of that nature, relocation expenses. If there's something for a home or a residence, that's not going to be something that's applicable to them. It's somebody has a building that's open to public use, and it has to be from the city. So this isn't something that's going to prevent somebody from receiving a certificate of occupancy through the city. This is a financing ordinance. And so what's going to happen is somebody's going to make application. For example, the facade improvement program is going to be where you're going to see this the most likely becoming applicable. They'll present a application, and then an inquiry will be made to the finance department as to whether or not public funds have been received from that particular person. If they're applying for the facade improvement program, that will be a yes. So they'll check that box. And then they'll be required, when they're reviewing that application, to ensure that at least one automatic door to a main entrance is being installed. So it's documentation of public funds that the city finance department has record of.
Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So would these fall under all of our community contributions programs as well? My area Council of the Arts,
Yes.
Visit Minot,
Yes. if
Chamber
they're-
EDC?
Yep, if they're getting public funds from the city, if that's a building that's getting public funds from the city, they have to have at least one automatic door present.
A building or an operation?
The building.
So, I mean, if our public dollars are going to fund the operation, the day-to-day operation, that would exclude them from that.
It's if the building is receiving the funds.
Okay.
As is written here, and that can be open for clarification if that's
I
something that
think
the
we need to
council wants
clarify
us to.
that.
Okay.
Right, like I'm thinking of all these.
Gary, go.
Sorry, all these entities that receive our community funds, they don't own their buildings, right? But certainly, if we're handing over $600,000 to the chamber, I would expect them to figure it out in their building, even though they're not the owners of it. So maybe we can put something in there. We have that $5,000 limit, but maybe if they are tenants, like a certain threshold, right? Like I don't know, but like I wouldn't want somebody who's getting, $5,700 from us who happens to be a tenant, to have to do this. But if they're getting like over $100,000 maybe of city funds in a fiscal year,
That they need to be located in a building that has at least one.
or modify the entrance. I mean, you don't have to go move a building. I mean, it's easy enough to, with money, put an automatic entrance on. I don't know, I just feel,
Sure.
for these hundreds of thousands of dollar grantees.
Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another one that pops to mind, obviously it's city-owned, but even like the Carnegie Library downtown, how would that be adjusted? That might be difficult with some of the undue burden language, but how do you see that working out?
Sure, well, the first requirement that comes to mind is that subsection G shall not apply to the grant or award of public funds to a recipient of less than $5,000. So I'm not really familiar with the Carnegie's entrances.
It's
and
in,
if there is
Justin
some
has plans,
accessibility.
we should have them, so there's gonna be the basement level, so you don't have to go up those stairs, and a lift. There is a sort of little lift right there now, but he was gonna make that, sort of modernize it. But you can get upstairs with a wheelchair right now, so he would make that door, or whoever, but that door that is at the side there would become automatic. Is it automatic now? No.
If I may continue, just then what's the timeline for projects like this? If someone, is it within that fiscal year, a year to, like, one calendar year to date from receiving those funds that they become in compliance?
And that's something that is not specified in this particular ordinance, but my assumption is that as people are applying for these funds, they would not receive those funds until there's proof that they're going to install that automatic door.
Any other comments? Any other? I guess it's just, go ahead.
Just
Paul.
one thing, would it be possible for maybe the finance department to put together a list to the best of their capabilities of any of these organizations that have received that $5,000 or above that would be subject to this? If we could, just for maybe second reading?
I'm getting a nod for that. I'm getting a
Okay,
nod from
perfect.
back there, so. So is this something that we want to refer back to Steph and her team to put those additions on before we do a first reading? Or is someone willing to make a motion to approve and a second for further action? Harold?
I did have an additional question while the council considers that. Steph, how would this apply for programs such as TIF or Renaissance Zone applications, which is a tax abatement, not necessarily funds being given? I think there's going to be some questions or maybe some potential misunderstanding on that would probably be good to clarify that publicly before council takes action.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up that North Dakota Century Code section that you're going to see over here that defines what public funds is, 210401. So it's all funds derived from taxation, fees, penalties, or from any other source which belong to and are the property of a public corporation or of the state, and all sinking funds of such public corporation of the state, and all funds from whatever source derived and for whatever purpose to be expended, of which a public corporation or the state shall have legal custody. The term includes funds of which any board, bureau, commission, or individual created or authorized by law is authorized to have control as the legal custodian for any purpose whatsoever, whether such funds were derived from a general or special taxation or the assessment of persons or corporations for a specific purpose. The term does not include funds of students or student organizations deposited in a student financial institution approved by and under the control of the school board. So as that's defined, it doesn't explicitly state TIF. If that's something that you think would be a point of confusion, then we can clarify that as well.
Any other questions or comments? Scott?
I would just like, as we're talking about getting clarification on this too, I have no idea right now because it hasn't been decided, but as a child care committee is looking at recommendations, obviously, home-based businesses are a unique aspect within law and everything else. And whereas it's one thing if you're a large center that would potentially be, if there was a way to get city assistance. But if we're looking at somebody's home that has 6 kids, I think a power door would probably be a little bit excessive.
The public.
Yeah, so I just would like some clarity on that as we go forward too.
On how this would affect home-based occupations.
Yes, home-based businesses. Again, I'm not even sure that that'll come out in the end, but I'd rather work on that now when we're working on this.
You were ready.
I'll take another crack. Even as far as, funds that are given to our community development or our community contribution, are those funds, if those funds go through that organization and those funds are used outside of their organization, given to a business that operates or organization that operates, started through a partnership, would those funds then be, since they were gifted from?
Likely, yep, if it's public funds, we're giving them from the city, it's a building that's open to public use and it falls within this use table. So I don't know if everyone knows where to find that use table, but I will crudely show everyone where to find that.
As you pull that stuff, if I can continue. I think of one thing that pops to mind is even the Tourism Recovery and Resiliency Fund that we established a few years back through Visit Minot. They gift organizations, not gift, but to help promote and build sporting events, different community events. With those funds, if they're given to an organization to help bolster their event, if it were to exceed that $5,000 mark, would those organizations then be subject to?
Well, as I read this is in our building section. So this is applicable to buildings. So every building that's open to public use, that's received the benefit of public funds, is where that requirement's going to take place. So if you're doing an improvement to a building and it fits everything that's within this ordinance, checks all the boxes, that's where you're gonna have to put in at least one automatic door for at least one main entrance to the building. And I'm not saying, this is not gonna be a one-size-fits-all type of scenario, because especially as it relates to downtown, there's a lot of different buildings that have been pieced together that have multiple entrances. And so it's something that as people are applying for funds, they're gonna have to take this into consideration, how they're going to accommodate this particular requirement, especially as it relates to that facade improvement program.
Does that cover it? Lisa?
So as Alderman Pittner mentions this, it kind of got my brain going a little bit too. So we have awarded business accelerator funds to Service Space and Planning Council. And they're the pass-through, and the loans then go to other small businesses within the community. So those small businesses would need to follow this requirement as well.
Under this language, yes, this is broad. So having that type of a program, it does open up those smaller businesses. But if they're receiving under $5,000, then they would fall underneath this exception G.
And I think in that situation, all of them would be over $5,000.
Or if they can apply that the building is technically infeasible to make the
So I think this is where the problem is, Steph, is, so, and I'm not picking on the chamber, it's just a good example we can all envision. So every building so you could argue that the owner of that building, and I don't know who it is, receives public funding vis-à-vis the rent payments that the chamber makes every month. So how it's written, the building owner would be responsible for that, not the organization, correct?
Yes.
And is that
If the
what we're
building owner is
intending?
receiving it. Well, and that's
Right,
something
no,
for
no,
the
no, I'm
council
just-
to consider. I mean, this is, our direction was to craft something comparable to Mandan's ordinance, which is what I'm providing.
Right.
So this is
We're just
open
having
to
a
the
discussion, yep.
council's, any amendments you want to provide, we can amend it. You don't have to pass anything on first reading tonight. This is just something that I've put forth pursuant to Alderman Padragula's direction for the council to kind of chew on and consider.
Have we talked to Mandan at all to see, like, in an instance of like a chamber or kind of organization, what they do? Like, if it is written the same way every building, then what about these recipients of, large city dollars who don't own their buildings?
We did have conversations with Mandan. My understanding is that this is pretty much only applied or enforced through their program downtown, similar to our facade improvement program. But their language does state any public funds, which means it would be subject to any federal, state, or local funds. That was the language that was on the ballot measure. That was approved by their voters to make it ordinance. But as far as I understand, enforcement is pretty much only done by the city of Mandan with regards to their facade improvement program downtown.
Would we have jurisdiction, let's say Magic Fund gives some dollars to a business in Glenburn? Would they have to follow that requirement?
Under this present ordinance, my answer is yes, and that's been a staff discussion too, about whether or not that would be appropriate or not. But this is anybody that's receiving public funds from the city. So if Glenburn, if there's a business out there, and they fall within this use table, so circling back to where that's located, it's public and private institutional uses and commercial uses identified in the table of uses 2.2 of the land development ordinance. So here's the list of public and private institutional uses. See, there's civic, banquet halls, libraries, museums, medical, parks and open spaces, public services, schools, and then here's a list of commercial uses. Offices, motor vehicle type uses like auto repair, food and drink.
But not like factories or anything?
It would not apply to industrial uses, as industrial uses are found in this next table.
Paul, you had your hand up.
I was just going to add to the list of information I'd like before our next meeting was the list from Dave. I'll get a list from Visit Minot for any organizations that have received over that $5,000 benchmark, and if Lisa could get a list from Service Basin Planning Council, a list of Accelerator Fund applicants or awardees to dig into that a little bit.
So it's kind of, I'm kind of getting the feeling that we're probably going to give this back. We can continue discussion, but I think we're going to probably give this back to clean it up, some clarification, and bring it back for the first reading. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'll make the motion to table until our next meeting, if Steph feels like that's adequate time.
I don't know if we have to table, there hasn't been a motion made, but
Okay.
I think we can just refer it back to Stephanie.
So, and just to recap, I want to make sure I have all the research assignments here down clearly. Finance is going to produce a list of entities that receive $5,000 or more.
But should we put I don't need to know who got $5,000 in 1974. Like, let's say since 2020? I don't know, but like, we don't need to go back, like, historically. I don't know, what do we want? Like, I don't want 30 years of data.
5 years, Dave?
5 years?
Yeah.
I thought he was waving high, but actually it meant 5 years.
Is 5 years reasonable, Mr. Lakefield?
That's what he indicated to
Okay.
us, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I just want to clarify that.
And Alderwoman Evans, you'd like to see an amendment to this ordinance that requires tenants.
I don't, well, have that language sort of in your, I wouldn't write it into the ordinance yet. I really am curious to see, like, jurisdictions who have this, what they do with these instances, right? With the tenants who are getting large amounts of municipal money.
Large dollars. Okay. And I might connect with you after the meeting
Right.
and see what we can find. Alderman Burlingame is looking for clarification on how this would affect home-based businesses. Does somebody want me to contact Mandan's attorney regarding this ordinance?
I would.
Any
get some-
specific questions?
If they had litigation or complaints, I guess would be my interest, or anything clarifying any of these points that we might have, or something we should be clarifying that we haven't thought about clarifying. We want to make this as simple as possible for everyone, I guess. If there's something we should be anticipating.
And what they do with organizations versus tenant, or owners too.
And a list from Visit Minot and Service Basin Planning Council of entities that have received over $5,000.
Mr. Mayor,
Lisa?
I feel like this is getting really, really, really big, a little bit overwhelming, quite honestly. I'd almost rather have us take a step back, in understanding that Mandan, they put this to a vote of the people, so that makes sense. We're not doing that right now. I wonder if we shouldn't just start out with the facade improvement program, see how that works, and because it would still be under our authority, we could add more in at some point, but I feel like this is creating a lot of questions that are gonna be difficult to get the answers for, and if we started just with that facade improvement plan, we could at least see how that goes.
Carrie?
I mean, I think the whole intent of this is public funds, and I don't think our, recipients of public funds in the facade improvement program should be required to, adhere to this, and other recipients of public funds shouldn't be. I think, if you get public funds and, it's either, it's not, we have to do, like, we cannot, to me, isolate a group of public fund recipients and say, you have to do this, but those of you over here don't. So to me, it's all or nothing.
But on the flip side, only the Renaissance Zone gets to be a part of the facade program. So we're excluding businesses outside the Renaissance Zone from those public funds.
Well, they could get public funds through other programs,
Right, if-
like the Magic Fund and things like that. I'm saying, if we're gonna say, if you get more than $5,000, the city, you have to do this. Like, to me, it doesn't really matter.
Scott?
I would just say that I'm kind of unsure right now of how big of a swath. I've said from the beginning, I would much rather it be a little bit more, if we're gonna talk about this, than just downtown facade improvement program. If this is what we decide to go along the lines of, I'd rather look at ways to incentivize and create better accessibility throughout Minot, even beyond doors. So I don't have enough information at this point. I look forward to getting more information and then looking at if we need to scale back or scale up or whatever. I don't quite have enough information at this point.
Are you satisfied with the can of worms we gave you, Steph?
No, I mean, I think Alderman Burlingame described it accurately, where the Mandan ordinance, it is a wide swath. Like, it's something that catches public funds, so it's gonna be applicable to a much, much wider group of applicants, whereas if we were to just amend the facade improvement program guidelines, like Alderwoman Olson was saying, that would be specific to that specific program. It would just be, it wouldn't require an ordinance change. We can just change the guidelines. Like, that's something that council can just direct staff to do, and that could be effective as soon as tonight or the next meeting if you want some time to think about it. I will say also too, the facade improvement program, I mean, we're still accepting applications. My understanding is we still have funding available for that. So as applications come in, if we don't change the guidelines, they're not gonna be required to do that until the council takes action. So you may be seeing facade improvement applications on agendas coming up that this particular requirement won't be applicable until the council takes action on it.
Steve?
Yeah, my thinking in asking for this to be looked at is to have a broad requirement. My feeling is that if you're accepting public funds, in whatever fashion, you need to be maximally accessible. And I think we're leaving a lot of flexibility here. We're giving an out if it's not architecturally feasible or financially feasible. We're exempting small businesses from it. I don't think that it makes a difference if you can't get into a facility, what the funding source of that is. If it's public funds, you should be able to get in there. So I would favor clarification, have Stephanie answer our questions, and go with a generic, broad ordinance.
Okay.
Another
Anything, Carrie?
clarification is, I don't know if this 5,000 is the right thing. So with Mr. Lakefield's, could we get like a number by those organizations too, so we could see how many? I'm curious to see if 5,000 is like high enough, low enough. If we did 10,000, would that, you know what I mean?
So like maybe a schedule of organizations that's received funds and then something
Amounts.
with the funds that they've received, so you can kind of see what
Yeah,
the
just even a
average-
ballpark, like it doesn't need to, but you know what I mean? So we can see if like, only 1% of them received over $50,000, right? Then.
Paul?
Yeah, it's just kind of my final thoughts on this, and just to kind of pick from some of the things that have been said, with Lisa offering the idea of just attaching this to the facade improvement program. Sounds like that's what Mandan's doing already. I mean, they have this, but what's precluding someone from calling out a business saying you've received public funds? It might not be from their facade improvement program, but they are subject to those, the way that their ordinance reads. So again, I don't like the wide swath that we've maybe got and the can of worms that could possibly open up. To Alderman Padragula's comments, as far as making them, maximally accessible, where does that stop? Is it an elevator needs to be put in? Not feasibly, might not be financially feasible, but that might just be what elevators cost. And to me, that's more important than an automatic door getting to the second floor of a building. And that's just in my opinion. I'm not saying it's wrong, but one way or the other. I'm not comfortable moving forward with this until questions are answered, which it sounds like we'll get some answers and move forward. But it's a slippery slope to me, and I don't know where that stops.
Steve?
Well, I think it stops with universal design, where every building is open to everyone, no matter what their abilities or lack of abilities. Until we get there, I think we chip away at it.
If there's nothing further, I think we'll just refer it back to Stephanie and your team. And
Yep, we'll try to get something on the next agenda, and if we don't have time or answers by then, we'll kind of do just a brief informational memo that we'll attach to it to kind of let you know where we're at.
thank you, Stephanie. Moving on to action item number 8 on the agenda, personal appearances. Now is the opportunity for those who wish to address the council to come forward to address the council. I would ask that you would limit comments to 5 minutes out of respect for others who wish to speak to the council.
Addressing the North Door entrance. On October 2023, at the Roundtable on Issues Impacting the Disabled Communities, Luke Telema, the building official, acknowledged the ADA requirements for thresholds. Harold Stewart said that, and not having been met, that it must be a punch list item. He also said that the North Door entrance was not considered part of City Hall, and perhaps that there was also a comment about pipes under the sidewalk being the issue. This conversation is very different than the conversation at the last City Hall meeting, February 20th, when a conversation was shared with Kimberly Porlberg, a representative of the ICC. In November 2023, I sent Lance Mayer, the city engineer, an email addressing staggered signs on a sidewalk that are the difference between me taking the sidewalk or the street during the winter months. He acknowledged access to accessboard.gov as a resource for ADA compliance, to know that the north door entrance was not in compliance with ADA requirements. It took him less than a week to fix the signs to meet ADA requirements set in 2015, but not meeting the requirements, he said, that the city has for accessible routes of 4 feet. It took 3 months to make a temporary fix for the north door entrance to meet ADA requirements. Harold Stewart said that it was because of the pipes under the sidewalk why the signs were likely staggered and likely could not be fixed. He said he was too busy to address it, and he told me he would address it with Lance Mayer. That's when I sent him a message. Pipes seem to be a go-to answer for non-compliance. The City Hall door on the north side being considered the door that the main access route cannot be true. Northland Health Centers on the north side operates on days when City Hall does not. The door isolating City Hall that may require a key card for access can be locked, isolating the north side. The ADA public restrooms provided for by City Hall on the north side of the building have been offered to be used for special events after hours, making the north door the only door to be used. Why I'm confused? Lance Mayer, the city inspectors, and the original architects were not looking for north entrance door to meet ADA requirements and ICC code requirements. The project for City Hall, having started in 2015, having taken 8 years to complete, it is difficult for me to accept that it not having met ADA requirements was only because, as Lance Mayer is saying, it was not what was being looked for, or that maybe that is exactly what the problem is that it was not what was being looked for. Again, addressing my concerns of the city of Minot's attitude on ADA accessibility. I'm very concerned about the direction of Minot is going in, if HUD has to be involved in order for it to go in the right direction for accessibility. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now is an opportunity for those who wish to address the council to come forward.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, my name is Drew Hansen, and I am almost a lifetime citizen of downtown Minot, and I just wanted to say just a few things. I won't take up too much of your time, but I just wanted to say how much I love living in Minot, downtown, and the accessibility improvements that have gone on in downtown especially have been really great, and I know it takes a lot of time and effort, and I just applaud you guys and the city employees. And this last snowstorm we had yesterday, I've gotten some comments, and snow removal was a big thing for us. Living with disabilities, it's not easy getting around downtown and around Minot when it snows, and the city, I thought, did a really great job this time getting snow removed, and I know it's not an easy job. So just wanted to say those few things and just applaud your guys' work. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Still with public comments. If someone wishes to address the council, now is your opportunity. Seeing none, we did have an email come in that I'll just read to put on the record from Kyle Erickson, Minot State University, and it reads, "My name is Kyle Erickson. I am a research associate at North Dakota Center for People with Disabilities. The city of Minot had contacted my organization about some concerns about accessibility concerns that a resident had raised about City Hall. One of my responsibilities at the NDCPD is ADA compliance. Originally, I was going to address my findings in person, but I am currently without a voice, so I was asked to submit my findings in writing. One of the major complaints was the podium in the meeting chambers. From my understanding, the complaint is that you are unable to get a wheelchair parked underneath it. While it would be great to cut a space out to remedy this, there's some important hardware housed in the base that would be at risk. I did notice that the city did provide an adjustable table to the right of the podium. As long as it stays there and has a microphone, I believe that this is an adequate accommodation. Another concern was the threshold at one of the entrances. Originally, it was deemed that the ledge to enter the building was too high, which I agree with, but a temporary fix was put into place until spring. Although not pretty, it is up to code until Mother Nature allows a more permanent fix to be made. I want to commend the city of Minot for being so proactive about accessibility. From what I can observe, City Hall is in complete compliance with ADA guidelines. If there are any questions or concerns, please reach me and he provides his email address, kyle.erickson.1@minotstate.edu. So I just wanted to get that so it's on the record. If there's no further public appearances, we'll move on to item number 9, that is miscellaneous and discussion items. Are there any to be brought? Seeing none, I will move on to item number 10, that is adjournment. So moved. We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
All right.
We are adjourned. Thank you.